All right, good afternoon, everyone. Good morning. My name is Angela. I'm with ProFarm Group based in Davis, California, and I'm pleased to present to you today improving soil and plant health in strawberries and managing problematic pests with biologicals. I'd like to remind you that we are a publicly traded company, and so any information that we're sharing in this webinar is really meant for educational purposes. And of course, if you'd be interested in purchasing stock or investing in our company, we encourage you to do your own due diligence. Now, I'd like to introduce you to our speakers and a couple of our colleagues that are going to be on to help with Q&A as well. Our first speaker is Taylor Hoover, who was just promoted to the California Regional Manager position. He's based on the Central Coast of California, and he brings nearly a decade of crop management experience to his role at ProFarm Group. He spent 5 years with Farm Fuel Incorporated, a leader in organic soil inputs to control soil-borne plant pests, with expanding responsibility from field technician to research and consulting manager to eventually general manager. Then he was at Acadian Plant Health, a producer of proprietary marine plant extracts for crop health. And as a key account manager there, he was a key account manager there before joining us in the spring of 2020. Taylor has a Bachelor of Science in Agriculture and Environmental Plant Sciences with a concentration in fruit science from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. And he is also a seasoned cannabis grower, having grown for over 10 years. So Taylor has a wealth of experience with the strawberry crop, and he will be going through, as you've heard in his bio, he has a lot of experience and passion for soil health, and he'll be going through a lot of the products that can help with plant health and soil health today. So Taylor, thank you for being on.
Thanks for having me.
Our second speaker today is Wiley Brown, and he's based in Florida. He's our territory sales manager there, and he joined ProFarm Group in January of 2022. He brings nearly a decade of experience in crop management, ranging from plant and soil health to fertilizer and seed selection. He has worked as a farm manager for Panola Farming Partnership, and more recently was a crop advisor with Simplot Grower Solutions. Wiley has a Bachelor of Science in Agriculture Business from the University of Louisiana at Monroe. So Wiley will be talking a lot about the pests, the problematic pests in strawberries, and some different solutions we have for you in regards to those problems. I also have our colleague Steve Bogash on the line. He is a territory sales manager and a product development or field development manager in the Northeast, and works with a lot of berry growers there. So Steve also has a tremendous expertise with indoor growing. So I believe I saw a couple of people mention that they do indoor growing. So Steve's going to be on to help with questions, and of course is an awesome resource if you are an indoor grower or protected or environmental, excuse me, I'm mixing up my words, if you're a greenhouse grower. And then I believe we were going to have our colleague Melissa O'Neill, Dr. Melissa O'Neill. She is also based in California and does field development throughout the West Coast. She has a lot of experience in strawberries as well, and she will be another person that could be a wealth of information for your questions today.
Well, good morning, everybody. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about managing some diseases in strawberry production. We're going to be talking mostly about just our products and how they fit into that disease cycle, and when and how to best use our products for both soil-borne diseases as well as foliar diseases. So the first product that we're going to talk about is Regalia, and the reason I chose Regalia first is not by accident or coincidence. This is the product that I would recommend starting off each strawberry growing season with, which I'll be talking about in a few slides. Next slide. So Regalia is a plant extract product from Reinutria sacchalinensis. The common name for Reinutria sacchalinensis is the giant knotweed. It's a plant that's commonly grown, or really it's a weed, all around Northeast Asia and Europe. This product is a liquid product, and it can be applied both in the soil as well as foliar. So depending on where your disease is present, that is where you're going to want to make the application of this product. It's really a common mistake thinking that Regalia is systemic. That is actually untrue. It is a translaminar product, so it is absorbed into the leaves, but it is not translocated systemically throughout the rest of the plant. The general application rate for Regalia is 1 to 4 quarts per acre on the label. However, when applied alone, we do recommend a 2 to 4 quart per acre application. And when we're tank mixing with other fungicides in the tank, 1 to 2 quarts is generally plenty. It is important to note that you don't want to exceed a 1% volume to volume in your tank mix or in your tank in general of Regalia. So I run into this problem really commonly. If you're a grower going out at, let's say, 50 gallons per acre at the early stages of production, and you try to go 4 quarts per acre, one, Agrian's not going to allow for that recommendation if you're in California. And two, you could cause some phytotoxicity or potential staining of the plant if you're exceeding that 1% volume to volume. So if you're doing 50 gallons per acre, your max rate should be 2 quarts. And if you're doing 100 gallons, your max rate can be 4 quarts. So it's really important to keep that in mind. We do recommend a 7 to 10 day application interval. That is because Regalia stays with the plant for a roughly 10-day period. So it's important to keep the plant primed in order for the modes of action, which I'll talk about in the next slide, to really remain active throughout the growing season. Always beneficial to apply biopesticides preventatively. This is no exception for Regalia. It's best to apply this before disease is present or right at the beginning of when disease starts to show itself. It does not work like a synthetic chemistry. You cannot come into the field once the disease is running rampant through the field and expect for Regalia to save your crop. It can help to slow things down when things get bad, but it is most definitely recommended to use preventatively. The unique Regalia boasts a unique frat code of P5, so it's the only fungicide in that frat code. So it is a great rotational partner with other fungicides. It has a 4-hour re-entry interval and a 0-day pre-harvest interval, which makes it great for strawberry production, as we are commonly picking 1 or 2 times a week. So you can spray this early in the morning or even the night before harvest, and then your harvest crews are safe to come out in the field and harvest later, or within 4 hours of application. There's also no posting requirements required for this product, and it has a signal word of caution, meaning that it requires minimal PPE. I think the PPE basically requires long sleeves, long pants, socks, shoes, safety goggles, and or safety eye protection, as well as a non-respirator particulate mask. So just a normal like N95 mask. Some additional product features of Regalia are that it is MRL exempt, meaning that there's no maximum residue limits for this product. So there should be no issues with residue limits when you're shipping to various places throughout the world. It does have a 3-year shelf life, and it is OMRI listed and NOP compliant. Now we'll talk a little bit about the Regalia modes of action. The first is that it inhibits pathogen growth through the systemically acquired resistance, or the SAR. And what the SAR is essentially one of the immune system responses of the plant. So Regalia triggers that immune system response, and it allows the plant to create antimicrobial compounds within the plant that are going to help fight off disease, as well as some other plant health benefits along with that. The second mode of action is that Regalia strengthens the cell walls by promoting more lignin. We know that lignin thickens the cell wall, and anytime we have a thicker cell wall, it's going to be more difficult for the pathogen to penetrate into that cell and reproduce. And likewise, with more lignin, we also get those stronger cell walls also improve the structural integrity of the crop. This is less important on something like strawberries, but many strawberry growers are also growing caneberries like raspberries and blackberries and blueberries. And this can actually help improve the structural integrity of those canes during heavy fruit load and prevent snapping. The third mode of action is just a general promotion of plant growth and plant health from Regalia. And it does this through enhancing plant health through producing more phytohormones. Phyto means light. So these are light receiving hormones that help with the production of chlorophyll. We know that chlorophyll is a substance in plants that absorbs light and to aid in photosynthesis. So when we have more chlorophyll present, we get more photosynthesis. This is really common with Regalia. About 24 hours after application, you're going to notice a greening effect to the plants where your crop will actually visually look more green. And that is due to the chlorophyll. So I mentioned that it's a great idea to start each planting season with a pre-plant dip of Regalia. And this is going to help in a variety of ways. The first is that it's going to stimulate root growth. The second is that it's going to protect plants against soil-borne diseases. So again, by soaking the roots or the bare roots of the strawberry plants in the Regalia solution, it is going to be translaminarly introduced into the plant and affect that SAR ability of Regalia, as well as start to stimulate some of those plant health aspects of the product, which include root growth and increased lignin, which make it more difficult for those pathogens to penetrate. Pre-plant dip rates are 0.5% volume to volume, so that's 2 quarts per 100 gallons. And if you take your attention over to the photo on the right, you can actually see a Santa Maria grower has adapted a large tote with the Regalia. It holds about 100 gallon or a couple hundred gallons in that tote. And then they take baskets and they put all the bare roots in the basket and they use a forklift to dip it. Another option is you can always just fill up those bags that the bare roots come with the Regalia solution, always minding your personal protective equipment when doing so. But that is also an approved way to, or a grower standard way of applying the pre-plant dip. If pre-plant dip is just not an option due to labor or timing or whatever other issue you may have, you can always make an application after planting through the drip. And we recommend a 4 quart per acre for that initial application through the drip. Now you can also do regular maintenance applications throughout the season into the drip to help with root health and soil health. And you can do that at 2 quarts or 4 quarts per acre. I have growers who do both and really see the benefit with either rate. So here's an example of what a pre-plant dip can do for strawberries. On the left, you'll see the Regalia treated bed, and this was done in Plant City, Florida, way back in 2010, but it's still a very relative photo. And on the right, you see the grower standard, which in this case was Actinovate and Serenade. And what you can notice is that the plant stand is much better. There's fewer dead plants, as well as a much more vigorous start to the crop. And this is often due to the stimulation of root growth and quicker root establishment, which we'll see in this slide. And on the left, you see that the Regalia treated plant has that new growth of those white roots, whereas the grower standard on the right was not yet pushing out root growth. And this usually happens within a week or two of application. So just taking a look at a trial that we did in Oxnard with Holden Research, where we tried to basically replicate what we saw over in that those prior photos. We wanted to take a look at yield and how the yield response is according to this program. So the standard fertilizer program, we're looking at the cumulative total crates per acre. So with the standard fertilizer program, we got just under 2,300 crates per acre. When we added Actinovate to that program, applying it 4 times, we got an increase of up to about 2,500 crates per acre. But when we did the Regalia pre-plant dip and then 4 quarts per acre 4 times throughout the season, we got an increase of about 320 crates per acre, which at that time, the cost was about $300 per acre for this treatment, but the return for this grower was $2,320 per acre. So that comes out to being a return on investment of 8-to-1, which makes Regalia a very affordable and cost-effective way to increase your yield. The next product I'll talk about is Stargus. Stargus is our biofungicide, or our living biofungicide. It is a Bacillus amyloidocafaciens product. The modes of action of Stargus are a little bit different than that of Regalia. So the first is the active molecules called peptides that are produced through the fermentation or the reproduction of these bacteria. So as the bacteria are reproducing, they're releasing metabolites called peptides, and these chemicals work to prevent the pathogen from growing. The second is the ISR protection, which boosts the plant's innate ability to defend itself. So it's very similar to what Regalia does, except you can imagine that one immune system response is the SAR, which is like taking a probiotic for the plant, and the ISR, or the induced systemic resistance, is something similar to if you were to get sick and your immune system would naturally boost itself in order to protect itself. So Stargus in ways are tricking the plant into thinking that it's being sick when it's actually not, and it's enabling itself to protect itself even better. The third mode of action is the protective shield. So there's actually living spores that develop and colonize the parts of the plants that we apply it to. This is extremely important in the root section, or the root zone, which I'll be talking about later in a later section of this presentation. So I mentioned that this is a Bacillus amyloidocafaciens, so it's a living product. This is the only living bacteria that ProFarm has to offer. The application rate on the label is 1 to 4 quarts per acre. And again, we recommend when it's being applied alone, 2 to 4 quarts per acre. However, in most cases, 2 quarts is plenty with Stargus. It is a more powerful strain of Bacillus amyloidocafaciens. It's a novel strain that we have developed and tends to be a little bit stronger than some of the competing products that are out there. And when we're tank mixing the product, we can absolutely get away with a lower application rate of 1 to 2 quarts when it's tank mixed. So that 2 quart really is the sweet range with Stargus. As was with Regalia, Stargus, we recommend a 7 to 10 day interval application, and there's no maximum application per season, just the same as Regalia. This also has a 4-hour REI and a 0-day PHI and a signal word of caution. So again, with that minimal PPE requirement. And it also is MRL exempt with a 2-year shelf life and OMRI listed and NOP compliant. I love showing this slide because this is a great visual representation of what Stargus can do out in the field or in the root zone. So what we have here is a Petri dish with 2 pieces of media. Both pieces of media were inoculated with botrytis at the same time, but the one up top was also inoculated with Stargus at the same time of botrytis inoculation. And what we see is that the Stargus has overcome the botrytis and has started to colonize. And you can see that colonization right around the piece of media there. And what's happening is it's actually releasing those lipopeptides into solution, which is causing that natural barrier for that botrytis to stop. So that's kind of a great visual representation of how Stargus can help prevent disease out in the field. The last product that I'll be talking about today, before I get into some of the crop programs, is JetAg 5%. So JetAg 5% is our general purpose sanitizer. It can be used in the field or as a hard surface sanitizer or irrigation sanitizer. It is a 5% peroxyacetic acid, or PAA, and it also has a 26.5% hydrogen peroxide. It is important to note that the signal word for JetAg is danger. So a tier 2 closed mixing system is required by the California DPR when you're using this product. And it's very important to pay attention to the label recommendation or label requirements for personal protective equipment. The mode of action for JetAg 5% is the oxidation of cells, so that PAA helps with the penetration of cells, of bacterial or fungal or algal cells, and then it allows for that hydrogen peroxide to dry the cell from the inside out. The target is broad spectrum algae, bacteria, and fungus, so it does affect a variety of diseases out in the field, but it is without saying that JetAg is definitely the most powerful tool for an organic grower in their tool belt as far as knocking back disease pressure in the field. For foliar applications, we recommend a 1 gallon per 100 gallon rate, which is 1% volume to volume. You can also do regular preventative at a 0.5% volume to volume. However, I've stopped recommending that because the cost difference is minimal, and I think that the 1% is just a stronger and more effective way to control disease, even at a preventative rate. That's just what I have found in the field personally, working with consultants and growers. For soil application, we do recommend a 2 to 3 gallon per acre, but applying Stargus Biofungicide for improved results is very important, which I'll talk about in my following slides. So this photo is a picture of a demonstration, a grower demonstration that I did. So this grower was clearly struggling from soil-borne diseases. You can see all of the brown spots in the field. Those are all dead plants. So typical of soil-borne diseases, up in that upper right-hand side of that field, you can see a big dead spot. So that's pretty common with soil-borne diseases. We call those hot spots. And this particular field had a little bit of a mixture, mostly fusarium, but it had Macrophyllina officinolina as well in there. So there was fusarium wilt as well as charcoal rot in this field, which is a detrimental, both are detrimental diseases to the strawberry industry in California. And this is the grower standard field. So I took a drone photo. If you want more photos of this demonstration or others similar to it, I can definitely provide those. But if we move to the next slide, you can see how the full program can really make a difference in grower or in plant soil-borne disease. So with this program, we did a Regalia pre-plant dip at 0.5%. And then right at planting, we did a Stargus 2 quarts per acre and then JetAg 2 gallons per acre and injected those at the same time. And it's really, really important that you follow up every 2 weeks with Stargus at 2 quarts per acre. That is what this grower did. I've worked with other growers in the past who have actually stopped using the Stargus midway through the season because they weren't seeing the quote results. What they were seeing healthy plants, so they thought, well, the disease isn't here, so we're going to stop using the Stargus. That's actually not a good idea because disease typically sets in when soil temperatures rise. So having that plant primed for whenever that disease is most active is really, really important in this program. So diligent use of the Stargus following the application, following that first application is very, very important. But what's important to notice about this field is you can see that there are far less dead plants. The shoulders of the beds are not dying out. You can still see some dead plants here and there, small spots, but this block was actually allowed to continue harvest for I believe 2 more weeks than the other field before they stopped harvesting. So just an extra week of harvest is able to pay for the program in itself. So just a quick review of what that program looks like. It gives you an opportunity to take a picture of this if you'd like, but that is a Regalia pre-plant dip at 0.5% volume to volume solution, followed by a JetAg 5% at 2 gallons per acre, tank mixed with Stargus at 2 quarts per acre. You do that through the drip irrigation right after planting on that first irrigation set. And then again, it's really important to follow up with Stargus at 2 quarts per acre every 14 days. And I've actually replicated this demonstration several times. So before I hand it off to Wiley, there was a question in the chat that I wanted to address about post-harvest storage of strawberries. And the only thing that we can really offer to you for that is a JetAg application right before harvest. So you can spray the JetAg at that 1% volume to volume. And we actually have data that supports that the post-harvest botrytis in the freezer is reduced dramatically when you do that. So JetAg is a great tool for that.
Take it away, Wiley.
Hey everyone, my name is Wiley Brown. I'm the territory sales manager for Florida for ProFarm. I'm going to be going over managing strawberry insect and nematode pest using biologicals today. The best practices with the best technology. A few common strawberry insect and nematode pests that we deal with, at least in the Southeast. I know Taylor and them have a few different ones. Lygus, two-spotted spider mite, aphid, flower thrip, tarnished plant bug, SWD or spotted wing Drosophila, root knot nematode, and sting nematode as well for your in-ground pest. Okay, so the first product that I'm going to be going over today is our bioinsecticide Venerate. And the active ingredient in Venerate is 94.46% heat-killed Burkholderia rhinogenesis, strain A396, and spent fermentation media. It targets sucking and chewing insects and mites, newly hatched larvae and nymphs, and adult insects and mites as well. Application rate is 1 to 4 quarts. My recommendation is that 3 to 4 quart range when it's applied alone. 7 to 10 day interval, and we'll go over kind of best practices and use at the end of my slides for that. Product features are MRL exempt, 4-hour REI, 0-day PHI, like Taylor said. Very good for strawberries because you can spray and be in the field the next day picking. Minimal PPE, excellent shelf life. Application is tank mix compatible with just about everything that you can think of, any of your miticides or anything else, that insecticides that are going out, even in conventional acres. It's easy to mix and apply, and very low impact to beneficials, minimal to zero effect. So mode of action for Venerate is going to be, first one is ingestion. Insects and mites ingest spray deposits or feed on treated foliage with death in, first off, interferes with the feeding right off the bat within the first couple hours, and then death in first 4 to 7 days. And that's why you see that 7 to 10 day spray interval. Feeding interference interferes with the probing behavior of piercing, sucking insects and mites, and stop feeding rapidly, like I said, in chewing insects. The residual control, superior residual control of susceptible lepidopterans compared to BT insecticides, broader spectrum of pests. And in the South, we have fall and southern armyworm that do actually show up in strawberries, especially early season. So Venerate XC, bioinsecticide for strawberries, you see on this chart here how many TSSMs per 20 leaves. And you see down at the bottom versus spear and acromite that we're very comparable to acromite and a good way ahead of spear. And that is Venerated, that 4 quarts that I talked about. Like I said, the best results that I see come from that 3 to 4 quart use rate. And then we have Venerate in Lygus bug, 44 to 64% fewer Lygus bug than alternatives. And this was done in St. Louis Obispo. You can see here, B-Leaf, Avant, and Pure Crop. The only one that got us was Safina. It's minimal. So Venerate, 22% fewer two-spotted spider mites than the alternative alone. and they use Nealta. I know that that's a pretty popular one in the Southeast, as well as in California for TSM. So I'll talk a little bit about the low risk to the beneficial insects here. You can see here it's quite a few. The sweet potato whitefly destroyer, mealybug destroyer, predatory mite, which is big in Florida, bumblebee, parasitic wasp, also big, predatory midge, rove beetle, aphid, parasitoid, and true bug. And like I said, 0 to no effect. And the one that you really want to highlight is predatory mite around that Lakeland and Plant City area in Florida. And this is just a slide showing the number of predatory mites left after a spray compared to Nealta and even untreated. Just strange. And with that, I'll move on to the Grandevo Bioinsecticide, WDG. Grandevo WDG, sorry, Bioinsecticide. Grandevo active ingredient is dead, 30% dead Chromobacterium subjugae strain, PRAA4-1T, and sperm fermentation media. This is a water dispersible granule. Mode of action is agitation and repellency. So you really want to make sure that you get a good coverage on the leaf and the plant. 50 to 100 gallons is recommended. Gut disruption and death, and that also occurs about 4 to 7 days, as well as the venerate, kind of the same. You'll see later on in my slides that that's why we kind of target that 7 to 10 day interval between the two spraying of those two. Reduces egg laying, egg hatching, and fecundity, and stops feeding in seconds, just like venerate does. Targets newly hatched caterpillar larvae, nymphs and adults of piercing sucking insects, mites, SWD, and thrips, and low impact on beneficials as well. The rate is 1 to 3 pounds. Obviously, with insecticides that you want to go to that higher rate, it does seem to do a lot better from 2 to 3 pounds than it does at the 1. Tank mix compatible, easy to mix and apply. And Steve, remind everybody, I believe Steve might still be there, what the prior formulation of Grandevo was pre-WDG that was really hard to deal with.
Oh, well, we don't like to talk about that much, Wiley, but thanks for bringing it up.
Yeah.
So it was a water disposable water. It was a soluble powder, very allergic to water. The AI was exactly the same, but when I came in 5.5 years ago, we were introducing this one, and it goes into solution really well. And for those who are doing tank mixing, just follow standard tank mixing order directions for when to work this in. Normally it's toward the beginning, one of the first products you get in, but it goes into solution really quickly. For those of you who use the old Grandevo, give this product a chance. It goes into solution really well.
Right. And that goes along with conventional chemistries as well, not just biologicals. So the spray interval with Grandevo is 4 to 10 days. Like I said earlier, recommended that spraying day rotation venerate Grandevo every 7 days, along with a contact insecticide of some type to throw in a different mode of action. No posting requirements. Product features are MRL exempt, 4-hour REI, 0-day PHI, minimum PPE, excellent shelf life, OMRI listed, and NOP compliant. And you guys probably and girls are probably seeing a trend of the product features on all of our products besides Jet Ag with the 4-hour REI, 0-day PHI, minimal PPE. It's kind of a trend across a lot of our products. So key pests are Lygus, two-spotted spider mite, and SWD. The high ROI, 7 times more marketable fruit than untreated. You'll see that in a study that we have here shortly. Worker safety is minimal PPE, 0 buffer zone required, and 4-hour REI, 0-day PHI. Keep hitting on those just because of the strawberry and harvest times. Grandevo WDG Bioinsecticide for strawberry, you see a 56% increase in marketable yield versus alternative. And that's where you get that 7 times the marketable fruit over Pyganic. You see Grandevo plus Pyganic in this study. %, fewer TSSM than alternative as well. This was done at Apex Ag Research in 2018. So not too old of data here in Santa Maria, California.
And Wiley, this is one of the real strengths of Grandevo. It is an excellent miticide. For most mites, European red mites, not so much, but for 2-spotted spider mites, broad mites, russet mites, etc., Grandevo at 2 pounds has proven to be a really superior product.
Yep. And you'll see that in my rotation guide or later at the IPM guide at the end of the presentation. Okay. And here's a chart about 37% fewer Western flower thrips and untreated. You see the Grandevo line in red down here. And you can see the days after, you can see where it goes up right after that 7 days, it starts to go back up. That's why that 7-day spray interval is recommended. We have 6 times more marketable fruit versus untreated. We had talked about. And these are just different sprays of Grandevo. At 50 gallons, 100 gallons, and 150 gallons. You see it, that 50 gallons is the sweet spot in this study. Here's a slide of Venerate and Grandevo. The recommendations for sucking insects, thrips, aphids, and whiteflies and mites. Start applications early, just like with any bioinsecticide or biopesticide in general. You want to get out there before you have the problem. This may differ from thresholds established years ago, just because of conventional chemistry kind of was known to clean up things rather than be preventative. If populations are predominantly adult, use Grandevo. If predominantly juvenile, use Venerate. For control of lepidopterans, apply Grandevo or Venerate at egg laying or at initial egg hatch. Where rainfall occurs overhead, irrigation is used. Include a spreader sticker, but avoid organosilicone spreaders and acidifying agents such as Li-700, which is a popular one from Nutrien. This should be applied anyway, even if the rainfall does not occur. Use a spreader sticker, especially for Grandevo with the agitation side of things. You want to make sure you get great coverage. We go to our last little end of the presentation here with Magistine is going to be our final product I go over. It's a bionematicide. Active ingredient, heat-killed Burkholderia rhinogensis, spent fermentation media. So this is a liquid formulation as well. Wide spectrum, it is a true nematicide, not nemostatic. Targets include reduces egg mass formation and cyst formation, prevents juvenile to adult molting, direct mortality of free living stages. So these are the targets of nematodes and wireworms: lesion, reniform, ring, root knot, soybean cyst, stubby root, sting, and stunt. Application method could be broadcasted, chemigation, center pivot, in furrow, injected, shanked in, soil drench, or T-band. Art of use is 4 to 8 quarts or 1 to 2 gallons per acre. And you'll see in the recommendations and a lot of the data that we have is that 2-gallon rate. Drip and drench application should maintain a minimum concentration of 0.05% volume to volume and applied at the end of the drip irrigation cycle. Use following pre-plant fumigation. I'll go over that as well here shortly. Nematodes in the soil stop moving 24 hours after treatment and die 48 to 72 hours after treatment. Magistine is absorbed into plant roots, repelling most nematodes. Any nematode that gets into the roots cannot complete life cycle and will die, and no new galls will be formed. Activity in the roots remains for at least 7 days. Magistine can have positive effects on root development as well. And I don't know, I think Steve hopped off. I was going to get him to kind of chime in on that one. So the application flexibility of Magistine can be applied multiple times, including at planting and in season. So it's not a just pre-plant or planting solution. You can use it throughout the season as well. No posting requirements, tolerance exempt, no minimum residue levels. So MRL exempt. Residues exempt from tolerances for export crops, no plant back restrictions, no plant phytotoxicity, can be used in field and greenhouse. Tank mix compatibility, sorry. No restrictions to use with other products, organic or conventional. So this can be mixed in, like if you're using Nimitz or if you're using Vellum Prime as well. So Magistine bionematicide product features, we'll just go over this for the, I think, 5th time today. Minimal PPE, no buffer zone, 4-hour restrict REI, 0-day PHI. OMRI listed, can be used to protect organic crop. NOP compliant as well. And here I've got a slide just showing the yield versus Nimitz and Vellum Prime when throwing Magistine into the mix. So about 5,000 more pounds per acre there versus just Nimitz by itself. This was done in University of Florida. I'm not sure where. If I had to guess, it's probably Gulf Coast Research for those that are familiar. Here's a little slide that was taken in Plant City. The left is obviously where Magistine was applied at 2 gallons per acre, and it was following fumigation. It's a pretty good indicator. So this is the, there's a ton of different conventional products out there that people put in rotation in the Southeast. I'm not sure about California or the Northeast or any of that, but these are just some that I'd gotten from a couple of crop advisors in the Southeast and in Florida. So obviously KPAM and VAPAM are both fumigants. And then you won't put Magistine after fumigation at 2 gallons per acre. And post-planting, Venerate XC 4 quarts and Grandevo WDG is really 3 pounds. That 2 pounds works great as well. In 7-day rotation, also with a rotation in conventional with acromite at 16 ounces every 21 days. Pre-bloom to harvest, Venerate XC at that 4 quart rate, Grandevo WDG at 3 pounds every 7 days. It just continues throughout the season. And then I just threw a cell in there as well for flower thrips at 6.8 ounces, 14 days rotation. Just a little IPM guide with 2 or 3 conventional products out of 1,000 that are used. And with that, that is the end of my presentation, and I'll hand it back over to Angela.
Excellent. Thank you, Wiley. Just a few wrap-up items. We have strawberry tools for you on our website. We are still at the maronebio.com URL for just a few more days. We'll be switching over to an updated URL soon, but go to maronebio.com/strawberries for an overview of all of these products and how they relate to the strawberry crop. We also have an SWD IPM guide that you can find there and download, a great tool to use if you're dealing with SWD in your fields. A quick reminder of our team throughout the United States. You'll also be able to find them on our website, but we do have a national team of crop advisors or crop consultants or PCAs, depending on where they're located, with a wide variety of expertise in not only strawberries, but many other crops, specialty crops, and broad acre or row crops. So please feel free to take a screenshot of this or visit our website. On the upper right-hand corner, just click talk to a crop consultant, and you will be able to see everyone and their contact information. And then we have a few more technical people on our team who specialize in specific areas, and usually they're either product related or geographically related. So here is our field development and product manager team. And depending on where you're located, these are great people to reach out to if you have a more technical question. They are also listed on our website. And then lastly, I would just like to open it up one more time for our speakers. Any questions that we have not answered, or any topics or information on biologicals that you would love to see in an upcoming webinar. I'll go ahead and just keep a few seconds, or excuse me, like a minute to check the chat and make sure there aren't any final questions we can't answer. And I would like to say thank you so much, Dr. Melissa O'Neill, for being on. She has a wealth of expertise in a wide variety of crops, especially strawberries, and she's been very active in the chat, answering everybody's question. Any other final questions for Wiley or Melissa? What's the difference between Venerate and Magistine? I don't know if it's possible for you, Melissa, or Wiley, you can go ahead. But Melissa, please feel free to unmute yourself.
As I mentioned in the chat, the differences between Magistine and Venerate are primarily on the labeled crops and target pests. Thank you. It was mentioned that Venerate and Grandevo don't work well with organosilicate adjuvants. Why is this, Nick? Thank you, Nick, for that question. Basically, organosilicate adjuvants are just ones we've seen lower efficacy with. I'm not sure that I have a specific answer as to the microchemistry that's at play there, but I will say that we do quite a few adjuvant screenings, and among the gamut of adjuvants, those two are not necessarily the ones that showed the greatest efficacy. If they're your go-to, I would say that, jar test and apply on a small portion of your field, just comparatively speaking, to make sure you're not seeing any adverse effects. And from there, if you have further questions, I'll put my email in the chat and we can talk further about that. Thank you.
All right, with that, I would just like to thank everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Wiley and Melissa, for being on to lend your expertise. For those of you that are interested in additional information about biologicals, please stay tuned to our website. Under the resources section, you'll see the webinars tab. And we have a couple of really interesting webinars coming up. Next week, we're doing an ISR webinar just to really dig deeper into that mode of action and how that all works. And then we also have some interesting innovations in how we apply crop protection products. So using drones and using different tools to increase crop protection efficacy. So those webinars will be posted shortly in a day or two. And if they're of interest to you, please check back on our website in a couple of days. I will be following up in an email, a copy of this presentation in PDF format, and then a link to the recording. If you're interested, you can also check our YouTube channel. We're on YouTube, where we have several recordings of webinars, and this recording will also be on YouTube in a few days. With that, thanks again for joining our webinar, and we hope to see you on a future webinar. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.